Welcome to Lawn Solutions Australia's Talking Turf. It's the third time we've done this, and I'm lucky enough to be joined by the master himself, Jason Hodges. Welcome.
It was funny, Joe, because last time I told them how much I loved you and I couldn't live without you, and no one heard it.
What a shame.
Look, it's been so much fun doing these webinars, you call them, and we got so many questions, and we felt that people were asking questions to their limit of knowledge. And so we thought we'd do a Q&A on here. So answer your question, but maybe answer the question you didn't even know to ask as well. So knowledge is power, and the more you get to know about your lawn, the easier it'll be to make it look schmicker.
Knowledge is power. We're getting very deep, 1 minute into it. So this whole session will be about Q&A. We've held sessions in the past that have been about specific topics, and we will go back to them in the future. But today is just about Q&A, and we've had a lot of questions already sent in, which is fantastic. If you get any along the way or something springs in your mind and you want to ask, please shoot it in the comments section. We only have an hour, so we'll try our best to get to all of them. But if not, we'll answer everyone in a later date with a response to your comment. So we're into spring. It's been a bit weird. How you been? What have you been up to? What are you saying?
The last time we spoke, it was around grand final time, and it was really warm and it was quite dry. And that goes for most of Australia. Everyone had sort of spring and sprung a little bit early. But now most places have had a heavy rainfall. I mean, we've had, I think, 11 out of the last 14 days where it's rained. The ground's really cool. So what happened is the lawn and my plants have sort of run towards spring. And then when they've got there, they've got this great big wash of cold water. So there was new growth, and now the plants are loving it, but the lawn looks like it's tired. It looks like it hasn't been fed, and I know it has.
We've been getting so many questions into our office with people just getting a little bit frustrated. I think the grass isn't growing as it normally is, and the worst thing for grass is when it wakes up after spring, it gets that warm hit, and then it gets one cold snap and all the colour goes out of the lawn, and it really, really starts to struggle. We're seeing a lot of that now.
Well, it is a little bit like a newborn. So you've got that new growth on the plant. No good? Good.
We're good.
It's like having new growth. It's like having, so the plant's burst to life. It's pumping out, it's taking all the photosynthesis it can get, and then it gets that cold snap, and it's a little baby. It's not ready for it. So
our main message to all of you now is stay patient. I think everyone's fertilising, they're scarifying, they're doing renos on their lawn, and they're wondering why it isn't that beautiful, vibrant green they normally have. This is particularly evident in the southern climates and areas of lawn that are in shade. They're just not warming up, they're just not drying out. So they're going to struggle until we get that warmer weather. So just bear with them.
Rule of thumb is you want the ground to be about 18 degrees. That's going to stimulate root growth, and root growth is going to draw the energy out of the ground and put it into the leaf, and you're going to have a nice lush green lawn. So when it cools down, everything sort of goes stagnant and even retracts. In winter, your lawns can sort of look like they're going backwards. So don't worry, it'll happen in the next couple of weeks. We just need to pray to Huey or whoever the rain god is to maybe turn off the taps for a couple of weeks.
So you're not alone either. This is happening to the turf producers as well. Don't know if many of you have tried to order turf recently, but it's not an overnight thing. Reason being is these turf farms, they're not mowing as much as they normally are because the weather's not as warm and it's not as hot as it normally is at this time of year. So when you're not mowing, the grass isn't growing, and they need grass to grow to regrow from the harvest that they had. So there's a little bit of shortage in stock at the moment. You may have noticed, but rest assured they're doing everything they can to get turf back on the trucks to you.
A good rule of thumb, you wouldn't expect to go and order bricks this morning and get them tomorrow. You wouldn't order carpet for your floor and pick it up this afternoon. And it's a good idea if you're doing a DIY job at home, or if you're a contractor, a landscaper, or a builder, put it into your plan of when you think you're going to need the turf. So it might be a month out, but get in contact with your grower and say, look, 3 weeks time, I'm looking at 100 metres of Sir Walter, or I'm looking at 50 metres of Grange, whatever it is. Can we pencil it in for the Wednesday? And then when that week comes around, you'll be able to move it, the Tuesday or the Thursday. But at least you're in the system, that turf's been sort of dedicated to you. Because if you ring up today and want it on Monday, you're going to be disappointed in waiting a few weeks.
Yep, spot on. So I guess the clear message there is to plan. To plan ahead when you're doing your job, because it's not going to be something that's going to happen, straight over.
And also for the DIYers out there, don't think you're going to order turf today and Saturday morning rip up the old lawn and late Saturday afternoon. I've seen lots of people waste lots of turf because they think they'll just tackle the job in a couple of hours. The preparation is the hard bit. the rolling the turf out's like icing the cake. It's the easiest and the most rewarding part. Well, water is the best part, but maybe plan to prepare it one weekend and then get it in the next weekend so that you're fresh as a daisy when you're laying it.
Great advice. So what we're going to do now is we're going to jump into the questions that we've had sent through. Again, a couple of these might cross over a little bit, but if you find something that you're thinking straight away on the spot.
6'3", 90 kilos. I like walks on the beach, dinners for two. I'm a Pisces.
Okay.
And I can wear a pink shirt.
It's not what James has asked.
Oh, James.
James.
No, I was describing James. He's 6'3" and 90 kilos. I'm 5'8" and 100.
So James has asked, is it better to get your lawn fully established and healthy before running weed killer through it, or to get up on top of the weeds ASAP? I might start here quickly with James. If you've got a new lawn, James, it is best to pull these weeds out by hand and try and avoid herbicides for the first few weeks or until you've mown it a couple of times. Reason being is you should only have a couple in the early days, so you can easily pull them out by hand. But herbicides, whilst they're perfectly safe, they do retract growth somewhat. That's why it is great to use herbicides over winter, because your lawn isn't growing, it's dormant. But for a new lawn, I'd stick to hand weeding until you've mown 2 or 3 times.
James, what's going on, mate? If your preparation was perfect, you wouldn't have any weeds to start with. No, I'm joking. Look, I'll tell you what, where you put 2 rolls of turf together and it is a little bit light, a bit more airy, you do run the risk of a weed popping up through there. And dead set, it is so rewarding if you've got a beautiful new lawn and you've got 1 or 2 tiny little weeds. It's rewarding because you know that you've just got 100% of the weeds out of that lawn in 30 seconds. So keep your eye on it. I would wait until you definitely couldn't pull the lawn up and the roots are bedded into the ground. You've mowed it a few times. Photosynthesis is the most important thing when it comes to laying a new turf. So sunlight on the blade of grass stimulating that new growth. So I don't like putting anything on it, including top dressing or sand or anything like that. And I wouldn't even overly feed it or put down a weed killer.
Good advice. Can't believe you said photosynthesis. Wow.
Photosynthesis.
From Cheryl, the best way to remove old soil and grass and the best preparation for new Sir Wally DNA certified turf, please. Now, you've done this a lot.
The best way to get soil is to get rid of soil is to get someone else to do it. Look, there's, grabbing a long-handled spade and doing it the old-fashioned way with a wheelbarrow. There's toros and dingoes and bobcats and rotary hose. There's so many different ways to do it, depending on the size of your property and your willingness to exert your back. I've got a little toro, which is a stand-on bobcat. They're perfect because they fit through the size of a door, but you can get them moving around a suburban property dead easy. Got a rotary hoe attachment on that. Don't expect everyone to have that, but you can hire one at a place like Coates or Kennards for a couple $100 of that. What I find that a lot of people do is they throw a lot of really good soil away when they're turfing a lawn. So I'm inclined to, when I'm doing it for a client, spray out the existing lawn using something like glyphosate. There's another one called Slasher, which doesn't have glyphosate in it. Slasher I would spray 2 or 3 times because I don't find it that strong. It's vinegar based. And then I'd rotary hoe. And the only reason I'd be taking stuff away is if it was a really bad soil structure, like an old building site where the builder had hidden bricks and stuff like that. And then I'd just take away the excess because I'd fluffed it up, probably nearly doubled in size. And then I'd just bring in some coarse river sand and lay my new turf.
Yeah, I think the key thing you said there is to spray out what's there and to really make sure it's dead. Because just keep in mind, whatever's left green, chances are it's got deep roots. And even if you take a little bit of soil out, you'll lay your beautiful new lawn and then horrible weeds or grass will pop back straight through it. Thank you, Cheryl. Will wants to know our thoughts on kikuyu in Brisbane. I really want something fast growing and self-repairing. Well, Will, kikuyu actually isn't really grown in Brisbane, and the reason they don't is the humidity up there causes a lot of disease. It's called kikuyu yellows. So you won't really find a turf farm in Brissy that'll grow it. Out west in Toowoomba, I think there may be a turf farm out there that gets it.
Toowoomba's a cooler climate. It's at the top of the hill and it gets a fair bit of rain. But it's a cool climate. If
you're looking for something fast-growing and self-repairing, you can't go past Tif Tul in your climate. It absolutely loves it up there. It's a great self-repairing grass. It grows strongly laterally, and it's perfect for sports fields. They use it a lot in sports fields and schoolyards and highway areas because it can handle the traffic and self-repair as well.
So the Dolphins, the new NRL club that's coming in 2023, their home ground is Tif Tul, and it's one of the most photographed footy fields in Australia because it
Looks unreal.
Unreal. And the best thing about it compared to the other NRL grounds is they don't oversow it in winter to green it up. It is that green all year round. Tif Tul's an amazing lawn. When you mow it, and you'll be mowing it like kikuyu, but that means you can park the car, the kids can play it, you can have a big dog, all that sort of stuff. And it's growing sideways rather than straight up. It's a special lawn. You can make it look as good or better than any cooch lawn, but your skill level can be a lot lower. You use a hell of a lot less water, and you use next to no food on it, and it looks spectacular.
Yeah. It's a great looking lawn. It's easy to look after and perfect for high wear areas. So I hope that answered your question there, Will. Now, Josh has a question on Sir Grange versus Tif Tul overall, and this is good, Josh, because I'm just looking at the comments, and we've had a couple come through on this topic as well. When would you get Sir Grange over Tif Tul? How's the thatch and maintenance requirements, durability between them, and the area he's talking about is Northern Australia. So it does differ depending where you are around the country. If you're, say, Brisbane and North, you can use Sir Grange in pretty much any application. It's a beautiful looking grass. It's easy to look after. It grows well. It repairs well enough. Because it is a zoysia grass, the further south you go, it doesn't repair quite as well, and it grows that little bit slower. So again, if you're in a northern climate and you want something that looks beautiful, and you're going to put a little bit of traffic on it, Sir Grange is great. If you're sort of south of Brissy, and you still want something to look great, but you're going to wear and tear it, it's going to get some use, Tif Tul is probably a better option the further south you go. It just handles that colder weather that little bit better. The thatch and maintenance requirements, look, Sir Grange is slower growing, so naturally it's less maintenance.
Sir Grange is perfect for the person who wants to play with their lawn, like they want to get a particular look, and Tif Tul's perfect for someone who wants to play on their lawn.
You just made that up.
I just made that up.
That's really good.
So Sir Grange for me, I love mowing my lawn. I love putting stripes in it. I love having different heights and lengths and stuff like that. And I've been to golf courses where the putting green, then the little, which is cut at about 4 to 6 mil, and then the edge, which is cut at about 15 mil, and then the rough that's not cut is all the one lawn. So if you've got a property and you've got a tree in the middle of your lawn, whether it be a rural property or a backyard, rather than putting a garden bed around it, I've got this new thing where I mow the Sir Grange around the drip line of the tree, and then I don't mow the Sir Grange underneath the drip line of the tree, and it looks better than Mondo grass. It looks better than Lirio, and it's just the lawn. And so because it's such a thick, dense lawn, you don't have to worry about the garden edge, and then you don't have to worry about weeding because there's no really open space for the weeds to germinate, and it's a good look.
You get the contrast.
You get a beautiful contrast in colour, different texture. So with the Sir Grange, it'll grow to about 150 mil and sort of just nice and neatly fall over itself. But you don't get any thatch. So when you look at it, you're not looking at brown bits in it as well. It's got a high silica content, which means it's got plastic in but it's a real lawn, but it means it's got natural sort of body in the grass to keep it green and give it strength. So it's a stunning looking lawn when it's really long, and then you put a really short mowed one around it, the two together. It's an architect's delight.
You went off your designer tangent there, but yeah. In short, Northern Australia, you can use both. Sir Grange is a little bit easier to look after up there.
Play on Tif Tul, play with Sir Grange.
That's it. It's our new slogan. Nice one. Going to claim that before you do with the bosses. Melissa's saying I have Sir Walter and wondered how I judge when it needs to be watered and how long do I leave the sprinklers on. It was put down in June, but it's only reaching length for mowing now. Great question, Melissa. We actually get this quite a bit. There's a couple of ways you can tell. I'm going to list one, then you can list the next one. One, seed head. Sir Walter Buffalo seeds under stress. You'll see that little single seed it produces. It doesn't reproduce, so you can't grow it from seed. It's male sterile. But when it's hungry or it's thirsty, it'll produce a seed head. So whenever you see that, it generally needs a water or a fertilizer or both. And just while we're talking about that topic, if you do have seed head, mow, water, fertilize in a Sir Walter lawn, chances are they'll go away. There's another couple of ways you can tell a lawn needs water.
Sorry to hear about the male sterile bit too, mate. Look, the one that I look for is when the blade of the leaf, if it's open and lush and fat green looking, it's happy and healthy. And if it starts to close up, it needs a good feed and a good drink. And then the seed head comes after that. So if you want to wait for his advice, wait till you see the seed head. But if you want to get it before it gets to that, look to the leaf blade.
It's always got to be a competition with you, doesn't it? Okay, Wendy. Wendy's moving up to the Sunshine Coast. Lucky you, Wendy. Can you suggest to me the best lawn to grow? And as seed or runners, it's a big area. Now, one thing I'll say to that, Wendy, is, again, it's a common question. I've got a big yard. I can't afford to turf the whole lot, or I don't want to turf the whole lot. Can I use seed or can I use runners? What I will say is I'd pick your key areas, the areas just around the house, a common walkway that we use, an area you'll want to look great straight away, and I'd buy instant turf for those key areas. It's ready in a couple of weeks. It looks fantastic, and it's a lot less water and inputs. If you did have a larger area and you wanted to broadcast something to cover it, look, you can get some seed mixtures, which are good. Just keep in mind, seed mixtures are generally cool seeds and grasses. So if you're up the sunny coast and it gets hot and dry, chances are they aren't going to survive. You can get turf and you can break it up and actually plant the runners or the vegetative material, and it'll grow from there. It's a bit of a process, but it works.
I've had really good success, and I would recommend this over a bag of seed. A bag of seed, it's going to cost you $20 or $30 down the hardware store, and then it's going to cost you a lifetime of pain with the weeds and with how much water you would have to put on to keep it alive. Now, I had great success years ago on television, and I did it at my sister's house as well in Mullumbimby, which is just on the border there of New South Wales and Queensland. We went and got half a dozen rolls of turf and a pair of shears that you normally do your hedge with, and we just chopped the lawn up into 100 mil squares. So 4 sides, 100 mil, 100 mil, 100 mil, 100 mil. Now, turf, when you lay it, you want it to be growing sideways anyway, so you get this knit effect and it ties together. If you think about a roll of turf, it might be 1.8 meters long, 600 wide, 1.8 and 600 wide. So your edge surface is only about 3 meters or 3.5, 4 meters. If you go and cut up 100 of these little squares, and they're all 40 centimeters each, and you times that by the 50 that you get out of there, you've got about 30 or 40 meters of edges. Go and put them on a top dress lawn, bed them in, water them, step on them so they've got contact. And every one of those edges is going to go north, east, south, and west. And you'd be surprised how quick you could cover a couple of 100 meters with a few meters of turf. You're going to have to concentrate on the weeds until it gets across, but literally you've just become the world's smallest turf farmer, because that's what you do on a turf farm. They cut the lawn out and they leave what they call a ribbon. And over the course of the next 12 to 18 months, the ribbon grows back across the 600 mil, and they harvest the next batch of turf. But if you were to put them, say, 20 centimeters apart, 30 centimeters apart, you'd get there in a very good growing season. If you did it now, I'd say you'd have something that looked like a lawn by March or April.
Yeah, no, spot on. You can do it. It's not the preferred way. It's not probably the easiest.
That's not the easiest way, but you can save a few dollars.
You can definitely do it. Now, a similar question what we had before from Rowan. Sir Grange or Tif Tul in Adelaide? I want Sir Grange, but I'm worried about slow growing. If I need it to repair after reno, will Tif Tul be the opposite and difficult to keep under control? So, Rowan, we sort of touched on this before, but if you're looking to reno a lawn in a climate like Adelaide, Tif Tul would be a better option than Sir Grange, unless it's a small boutique courtyard area and you just want something that's easy and looks great. If you've got a lawn and you're going to use that lawn, can't remember what you said before, but it was good. But
you play on Tif Tul and you play with Sir Grange.
No, that's good, trademark. So Tif Tul will be better. You can cut it low, you can top dress it, you can treat it pretty mean, and it's going to bounce back. The other thing with Adelaide is I always think of the Adelaide test each year. It's bloody hot. It's 40 degrees. It's really, really dry over summer. Tif Tul is the most drought-tolerant turf on the market, the first and only to get the Smart Approved watermark. So you think a climate like Adelaide, pretty much anywhere in Australia, except
pretty much the Mediterranean. It's hot and freezing cold.
Yeah.
That watermark, think of your washing machine, your dryer, and your air conditioner, your fridge. You have that star system on it and a tick of approval to say that it's saving us energy and it's the right one to buy. And like you said, Tif Tul is the only turf in Australia that's had that. And it means it uses about a third the water of other turf varieties, and it requires about a third the fertilizer to keep it to, say, at a golf course standard. So if you were using it on a putting green to golf course, what they would normally put on there, water-wise and food-wise, to keep it green, you're using not a third less, but 1/3 of it. So 2/3 less.
Yep.
I'm good at maths too.
You're on fire today, I'm not gonna lie. Levi, what is the best way to bring down the height of cut on Tif Tul? Should you slowly bring it down or do it solid scalp and maintain it? Now, I've just done this recently to my Tif Tul lawn, Levi, and there's a bit of a saying amongst Tif Tul owners, and it's smack it down till it's brown. Tif Tul, you can really cut it nice and low, and it will come back in a matter of weeks with the right conditions. Don't do this in the cooler months of the year. Only do it in the warmer months. It's called dethatching, scalping, scarifying. There's a number of different ways for it. Look, you can do it both the ways you mentioned, but at the start of spring, if you've got a lot of thatch, it is painful because it's hard to push the mower through. It's a lot of catches to get rid of, but I'd be smacking it right down almost to dirt.
Smack it down to your brown. It's not quite as good as my one, but yeah.
You looked at pink shirts there with that with the sideways hat there, but
I like it.
Yeah.
The other one is to grab a garden rake. There's dethatching tools. The Lawn Solutions website sells one made by Wolf. You can get one at Bunnings from Cyclone, and you go through it. You just rip and tear it, and then everything that sticks up, you mow it off. But yeah, with the Tif Tul, mow it low and let it go.
Yeah.
Oh no, sorry.
No, you
Mow it brown and mow it down and let it brown.
You'll get there one day.
Yeah.
Okay, Melissa has cut in Sir Walter at the highest her mower will go, but after a week of rain, it got overgrown. Now it's a yellow tinge when I mow. It's almost too thick and crowns high. What can I do? Similar sort of
Same thing. Garden rake and rip and tear it. And then if like this is worst case scenario, you mow with your front wheels off the ground. If it, like I'm talking about, your garden looks like Jurassic Park. You lift the front wheels up, and you're really just using the blade like you would a whipper snipper. And do that. Maybe you got to rake up a bit of grass if you can't catch them to catch up, and then slowly bring it down to a manageable height. That'll put your lawn under a lot of stress if you let it grow a long way, because you will be scalping it, and not in a good way like you let it brown down and go.
I will just say one thing with scalping or dethatching Sir Walter, it doesn't have underground roots, which we call rhizomes. So you can't go as low as you can with the kikuyu, Tif Tul, but just leave a little bit of matter, a little bit of root mass present on top of the soil, and you'll be fine. Gillian and Ashley put weed and feed on their lawn, and they killed all the weeds, and the grass has been affected. What should I put on to make my grass come back? Thanks in advance. That's what TR means, I think. But with weed and feed, it's a bit of an unknown. Weed and feed, the actual product, is not safe for most soft leaf buffalo lawns like Sir Walter DNA certified, for example. It's not registered for them. The active ingredient is dicamba, and it can actually send lawns quite brown, as you've described there. I don't know if you've ever done this, but it can affect them pretty bad. So
I reckon we used to get a couple of thousand requests a year about those gardens.
Yeah.
Dad's killed them all.
Yeah. Very, very common. Fortunately, it doesn't kill it. It just browns it off really bad. And time, water, fertilizer, kind of regular mowing when you start to see some growth will get it back. But if you do get broadleaf weeds in your lawn, particularly if you've got a softleaf buffalo lawn, but any lawn, don't use weed and feed. Use a specialist broadleaf herbicide. We sell one called all-purpose weed control. It just kills the weeds, and it doesn't harm your lawn. It can only harm it very slightly if it's a young lawn, like we explained before. But you better herbicide and then fertilizing separately.
So flush it out. Give it plenty of water. Mow regularly, and I'd sort of do half-strength food, kind of like it's a patient.
Yep.
You know, you don't want to feed a patient big fat rich food. You know, you just want them to sort of
ease it back
to life. Yes.
Yeah. Liam's got mushrooms in his newly laid buffalo turf. It's healthy, but the wife says it won't be much longer if the dogs eat a mushroom and die, so please help. Mushrooms generally occur, for the most part. There's a couple of reasons. You'll touch on the second reason later, but generally they occur with a sudden change of conditions. If it gets hot to cold, or particularly if we've had sort of a week or two of dry weather and we get a shower of rain, that's generally when you'll see mushrooms, is when there's a drastic change in the weather. They're not harmful to your lawn, this particular one. You can just mow them off and they'll go away for a couple of days.
I've got some funky red ones in my lawn at the moment. I'm thinking about going up to Nimbin and see if I can sell it. Look, the other thing is probably you've got a little bit of a drainage issue. I find that if you go and aerate there and maybe throw out some washed river sand, which is what you'd find in a kid's sand pit, it's got no clay content in it. Garden fork, and then you can throw some sand out, sweep it in. I don't mind using the old broom on the lawn to top dress. Yeah, it brings the leaves back up. Those holes fill with sand, and then you won't have the drainage problem next time you've got that change from dry to wet and hot to cold.
Yeah, spot on. We just moving on to the next question now, but I am just looking in the live feed. We've got a lot of questions coming through, which is great. We'll try to get to a few of them if we can, but if not, they will get answered at a later date, or hopefully today. We just had one come through from a Mitchell Marsh. I'm wondering if Yeah, guy who wants to
Play
keep
the
20 World Cup.
straight ball straight. Well done, mate.
Okay, Maryland. Maryland's got a kikuyu lawn in winter. We get frost here in lovely Wagga. That knocked the kikuyu a lot.
It's Wagga Wagga.
Wagga Wagga place so nice, they named it twice. So when the spring comes, I get lots of weeds where the grass has died. What can I do to prevent this?
I would feed it going into winter. Just like if you're an elite athlete and you had to go and have an operation, you're going to recover quickly if you're very fit and you've looked after yourself, compared to someone who's let themselves go and lives on hamburgers and cokes. And if he had an operation, then he'd probably struggle to recover. If your lawn, the hands are back to
Yeah, you're right.
If your lawn is strong and healthy going into winter, chances are it's going to hold on longer and recover quicker. I love using colour guard in the middle of winter, but you use that on a pretty good lawn anyway. So by the sounds of it, your lawn's been knocked around. So you've got spring and summer to get your lawn up to strength. It's like doing the 28-day gym, challenge. Get it going now. Keep it going through summer, and then just around Easter time, really give it a good feed, a nice mow, and wish it best of luck to get through that cold winter in Wagga Wagga.
Spot on. It's all about the autumn lawn prep for winter, isn't it?
I think it's the most important out of the four.
Yep.
Lawns are going to grow in spring. They're going to hang on in summer, but autumn is the one where you can stay outside a little bit longer if the lawn's happy, and it means that it's going to get you through winter. Just
one more tip to go on with what Jason said there, which is spot on, is leave your increase your mowing, your cut height a little bit when you're mowing. Try and leave as much leaf on the grass as you can heading into winter. A couple of reasons is frost burns from the top down. So if you're in Wagga, it's probably a bit different. You get a lot of frost. It mightn't really matter. But in areas where it's 1 or 2, if you leave the grass longer, you can come in on your first mow for spring and you can mow most of that damaged leaf matter off and start a lot greener than you would otherwise.
Have a look at colour guard for people that are in cooler climates. Colour guard is a massive game changer. I've sprayed my lawns with it the last couple of years, and people come around in the middle of winter and go, how do you get it so green? And all of our turf suppliers in winter, our turf's coming green and lush like that. No one else can do it.
Cosmetic, it looks really, really good. Bill's just pulling up old paver blocks, which is something you probably know a little bit about, where the boat used to be. The underneath soil looks okay. How deep should I dig into the soil before greeting a fresh bed of soil? Underneath drains pretty well. How far down would you be going?
Look, professionally, you'd aim for about 30 centimetres. DIY at home, if I was doing it this weekend, I'd just get my spade and aim for as deep as I could. So 150, 120, 150, 200 mil, just taking out spades full at a time, turning it over, breaking it up with a garden fork, leveling it off. If I need to bring something in, I'd mix some coarse river sand in with that, which you can buy by the bag or get it ordered and delivered. And also that sort of sand that you find in sand pits, fine to use. Don't use bricklayer sand. It's got a lot of clay content and it sets hard. Where the river sand and the beach sand, they don't set hard. They actually don't really have a structure to them and they don't compact. So they're really good to work with our existing soils.
Yep, no, spot on.
And they're inert, which means they don't have anything in them, which is good.
What?
Inert.
Vocabulary. It's getting better every time we talk. That's pretty much it for the set questions we've got. So we do have a lot of questions to work through here. The first bunch of them were just basically saying we can't hear you, so we'll move on from there.
G'day, Coolabah.
Coolabah Turf says, g'day, hello to everyone down at Coolabah, a wonderful turf farm down in the Chuka. So now we're going to move down to Anthony. Anthony's talking about grey leaf spot in Sir Wally. Grey leaf spot affects all buffalo lawns, and it generally comes at this time of year when we've got a little bit of humidity, which we've seen lately. There's a couple of things you can do whenever you get disease like grey leaf spot is to firstly spray a fungicide. There's one called Mancozeb that's pretty readily available. You can get it from any nursery off the shelf. You can get it from our online store as well. It will kill most diseases you see. The other way to treat them is cultural practices. A good way of breaking the disease cycle is doing a renovation or coring or aerating your lawn. Don't fertilise it straight away because that can sometimes expedite. Is that the word? Expedite the disease. If you want to try and treat the disease first, and then you can fertilise and repair.
The other thing is definitely use a catcher for sort of the month or so afterwards.
Yep.
I'm a massive fan of using my mulching mower, but I would definitely try and pick up every clipping I could, even to the point where when I mowed the lawn, I'd probably go with a blower and try and get off anything that the mower didn't pick up.
Spot on. Good advice. Now, Scott, Scott's in Queensland. The first thing you should do for the first 6 months in Queensland when you get new turf. Now, Scott, I say this to everyone that's talking about new lawns, and the thing we can't stress enough is you need to keep it nice and wet. You need to water it pretty regularly. You think it's gone through a pretty harsh transition. It's been cut from a previous home, transported in a hot truck, and delivered to your door and laid out on a totally new, often unfamiliar soil base. It can be a couple of 100 k's from the farm where it's grown in a totally different microclimate. So it's got to settle in. We can't stress enough. You've got to keep this new turf nice and wet. So a sprinkler a couple of times a day if it's hot. Once in the morning is great, but once at the hottest time of day, if we're in the middle of summer and it is hot and dry. Just a little trick, and my pop actually taught me this trick, is whenever you water the lawn, as soon as you're done, dunk a tea towel or just a normal towel in water and hang it on the clothesline or hang it on the fence. When that towel's dry, your lawn needs another drink. So if it's a really, really hot, windy day, just think that could be dry in a matter of hours. Yeah. It's time to give you a drink again. It's a bit overcast and a bit cooler. You know, you can stretch it out a little bit more.
Always say to people that the turf should never go backwards from the minute it's been laid. And I'd say 75% of the people that I've landscaped for have underestimated how much water they should put on it. So a great rule of thumb is if I was to say put 20 mils of water on your lawn twice a day, ice cream container, put it where the sprinkler's hitting just on average like everywhere else, go to the ice cream container, you can see whether it's got 20 mils or not. And you're right, I actually use the towel thing, but I lay it down on the ground. Didn't think about laying it up, but that's a good idea too. But yeah, look, I don't really think you can overwater a new lawn for that sort of first week or two, unless you're doing it in the middle of winter, but we're not. So right at this point of time in Queensland, I'd be watering morning, noon and night if I could. And no excuses, it shouldn't dry out around the edges or anywhere if you're putting enough water on it and your turf's got contact with the soil.
Yep, absolutely. CA, we don't have the name, I'm guessing. There's some initials, but
chartered accountant.
Or maybe it stands for core aeration. They've asked about core aeration. After core aeration, if there are any holes not filled in with sand in the top dressing, is it okay to leave it just empty, or should I buy some sand and fill it? If you're coring, I'd be filling them up. If you're aerating and they're only thin tines, you probably don't have to worry about it as much. Coring, definitely.
You don't have to worry about it. Like if you look at a golf course when they do a putting green, they'll go and core it and they'll throw the sand out and you'll see it fall into holes at different heights. By the time people have walked on this traffic and all that sort of stuff and movement when you water and movement with the wind, they'll fill up. So you've made the air pocket, that's great. That's going to increase the oxygen for the roots. It's going to let water penetrate the ground. Something will fill that void in a matter of time, whether it be the sides crumbling in on it, but that's okay as well because you've still got that oxygen level raised and it means that the water and the air can get down to the roots.
Okay, we're just going to move down to Linda. Now, Linda's toying up between getting a substantial amount of top dressing done or just having the front and backyard leveled. At the moment, both front yards are up and down like Brunckhorst trousers. And you definitely, good one, Linda. Linda's in Kingscliff in New South Wales, beautiful part of the world in Kingscliff. So if it's up and down, like the example that you've used there, I would suggest top dressing. The only thing you've got to be careful of is if you've got a soft leaf buffalo lawn like Sir Walter, is to try and leave some of the leaf showing when you're top dressing. So if you've got big up and downs, you're going to have to do it gradually. You've got to stop saying gonna. You're going to have to stop doing it gradually. You're going to have to do it gradually. If you've got cooch, tif tuff, kikuyu, something like that, you can cover it. Not too deep, but you can cover the leaf and it'll grow back through. So I'd suggest you do that. If you're going to top dress, what would you normally use?
I would use coarse river sand and I would do it, like you said, where you could always see the blade of the grass. So if it was up and down like a bride's 90, which makes more sense than grandpa's Reggie's, I would do it in layers. And so throw the sand out. I use a broom or a square mouth shovel, move it around so I can always see the blade of grass, water it really well. I could come back to that within a matter of about 4 or 5 days and I could do the next level. So say if you had a hole this big, I would do it over the course of about a week or two, or probably 2 to 3 weeks to fill it up. If it's really bad, you would look at, sort of renovating that lawn a little bit more than maybe just top dressing.
Yep, spot on. Chris is getting long, thin-looking grass growing between my Sir Walter buffalo. I think there's a winter weeds. How do I stop the spread and get rid of it? it looks so ugly because there's long patches. Now, Chris, if it is a winter weed, the most common one is winter grass. Fortunately, it will start to die now if and when the weather does warm
Still
up.
good to pull it out because of the seed pods. What I would do is water really well, and you'll get the root system out by hand.
It'll soften them up a lot, but there's a variety of long grass-looking weeds that could be a factor here. If it grows in a clump and it produces a seed head, chances are it is winter grass, and as Jason just said, they are easy to pull out. But just keep in mind, as the weather warms up, most of these winter weeds will start to die naturally. So the best thing you can do is to fertilise, mow regularly, and try and get your grass growing and your lawn healthy. The best defence to weeds is a healthy lawn. And then coming into winter next year, we can use a pre-emergent herbicide like oxyfert, which actually stops the weeds before they appear, and it works really well on things like winter grass.
I've used oxyfert at Easter time the last 2 years, and I wouldn't have a weed involved.
Tony's asking about RTF, which is rhizonomous tall fescue, which is a cool season grass. Any particular tips on RTF care other than a lot of water in summer? Being a cool season grass, they do use a lot of water, so that is a point you have to keep up with. But fescue or RTF fescue, you do have to treat like a normal lawn. You still have to fertilise regularly, even in summer. If it's cool season grass, it means it grows in winter. But if you're watering it in summer, it's still going to grow. So fertilising regularly and mowing regularly is a really important thing. Tony will be down south somewhere, I'm guessing either in Canberra, Melbourne, or even Tassie, where RTF's grown.
It is literally the most stunning lawn I've ever laid, and I would never lay it again. It's hard work and a lot of water, and when we're trying to be sustainable. If it's your dream lawn and you're a fastidious lawn keeper, great, go for it. You'll have a very exotic lawn. But you know, the substitutes now with Tif Tul and Sir Grange, so much easier to look after, so much less water and fertiliser.
In certain locations, it can be good when it's a cooler climate and you've got a lot of water, but it does take a bit of work to keep it nice and green, particularly in our long hot summers. But for Tony, the same principles apply for cool seasons as they do for warm season grasses. You probably won't have to use Coldicutt in winter because you'll stay nice and green, but fertilising at least 3 times a year, and then obviously regular irrigation with that, but regular mowing too. And we can't stress that enough with general lawn care. I think it's quite overlooked is how good regular mowing is for lawns.
Yeah.
Now, Darren's asking about the best top dress for Sir Wally buffalo. I think we covered that already. It's got to be sandy, Darren. You don't want it too heavy. You don't want a heavy garden mix or anything like
What
that.
a lot of landscape supply yards have done is when we call it topsoil, top dressing, it used to literally be soil that they found somewhere that was the topsoil of the land. Now, when most of our soils is composted from the green waste from our tips, the top dressing that you're getting is very organic with lots of big chunky bits in it. And that doesn't break down quickly when you're putting it over the top of a lawn. And I honestly believe coarse river sand and the beach sand, which is like sandpit sand, it finds its level and it doesn't compact and it's inert, so it's not dangerous. It doesn't have any other things in it. I just think they're the idiot-proof top dressings that they're easy to work with. You can throw it out, you can rake it off and broom it easily.
Yeah.
And when you hose it in, it's kind of invisible. It's definitely not muddy.
I guess what you don't want is you don't want something that's going to sit and bake on top of your lawn. The darker the soil is, generally the more it heats up and bakes. So nice and sandy for that reason that Jason just mentioned. Daniel's Lawn Care is asking how we're going. We're going fantastic. Hope you're well as well, Daniel.
You should be too busy. Get back to work.
So Joanne's kikuyu lawn is turning yellow in spots all over my lawn. Could it be fungal or grub? It's hard to tell, Joanne. Please do get in touch with us via our website or our Facebook page and send us through a photo. Could be both. Just quickly, if it is grub, it will spread pretty rapidly. So that's a telltale sign to tell if it's grub. Also, there's a couple of tricks you can do. You can get a big bucket of warm soapy water, pour it on the edge of one of them yellow patches in your lawn. If there are grubs there, you'll be surprised. Within 30 seconds, they'll come to the surface. Another thing you can do is get a wet towel, put it down, leave it overnight, come back in the morning, lift that wet towel up. They'll probably be there as well.
I lost a lawn, and they attack happy, healthy lawns too.
Eat the best and leave the rest.
It's just a day of cliches. That must be true because they attacked my lawn. I remember I went away for the weekend, came back, and it looked like someone had sprayed a V in my lawn. It started like in one little footprint like this, and it went out to about 12 meters wide by the time I got to the other end of the lawn. And when you raked over the grass, it just fell over because the root system had gone.
Yeah.
Very good chance you're probably dealing with a humidity problem.
I'd say so.
You know, mow it, rake it, keep the, make sure you pick up the clippings.
Yeah.
And don't worry about watering it too much at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Sean, the most rewarding part is enjoying a frothy when watering it. Couldn't agree more, Sean. Brent.
I might water it while I water it.
Yeah. Sure where you're going there. Brent Tobin, g'day Brent. Is there such thing as a dwarf kikuyu? Very technical question, Brent.
It's more of a short person kikuyu. Just being politically correct.
To be perfectly honest, it's quite a well debated scientific question within the turf world. There are a lot of kikuyus that are sold as dwarf kikuyu, and yes, I guess if you look at the actual specifics of it within the plant breeders' rights, you know, log that they have of turf, there is such things as dwarf kikuyu. They tend to grow a bit shorter and possibly thatch up a little bit more, even have a short internode. It is debated a little bit, but that's a very techy question, Brent. We have to get more answers on that.
If you want to mow a kikuyu lawn every day and then put a retardant on it like Primo, you can make it look like it's a short man kikuyu. But trust me, it's a lot of hard work, and there's easier ways to skin a cat.
Daniel's Lawn Care is back again. He said g'day a while back. He's talking about the work. He's asking questions now. How do I stop crow's foot germinating in my Sir Wally lawn? I already have a pre-emergent out. Now, crow's foot's one of them tough weeds. There are chemicals registered to control it, but most of them are pretty hard to get your hands on residentially or domestically. You can speak to your local, larger chemical company, chemical rep, and get the specific chemical for it. My best advice for crow's foot, summergrass, crabgrass, any of those weeds that are tricky to spray out, basically any grass type weeds that aren't broadleaf, is to get yourself some Roundup, some glyphosate, some slasher, and a weed bourne, which is basically a metre long stick with a paintbrush in the end, or get a paintbrush and carefully apply a non-selective like glyphosate to these weeds without touching the lawn. Like I said, you can buy the sprays, but they're a little bit harmful and they're a bit nasty. So
my version is glyphosate, Roundup, squirted detergent, ice cream container. I'm using like half a cupful of glyphosate and a cupful of water, squirted detergent. Put the glove on that you use in the kitchen to scrub your plates, and you've got a dishwasher, fancy pants. But like the big pink gloves, and go around and literally touch it and try and bruise the plant. It works really well on clover.
Yep.
So you let the clover grow higher than your buffalo, and then you just go and touch the clover dies. You're using next to no chemical. The grass grows underneath it. If you've got onion weed, just crush it between your fingers with the shine of the poison on it.
Yep.
And for all the other things, just go along and touch it, and kill the grass around it. I find it 10 times more accurate than a weed wand that I tried, and I ended up killing big circles.
Yeah, no, I agree totally with that. And whoever's come to the Lawn Solutions office with that type of question before, we generally say it's the best way. Clover and broadleaf weeds, they're a little bit easier to control. You can spray herbicide, but these more grass-specific ones, that is the best way. Jenny, how far ahead can you pull up the old ground to put new turf down? We're in, I don't know how to say that, Wycheproof, Victoria. So, again, a pretty common question, particularly if you're spraying glyphosate, Roundup, or slasher or something before you're ripping out an old lawn. It is best to wait a couple of days. If it's dead and it's been dead for a while, you can pretty much rip it out and relay a new lawn the next day or the same day. It's not really going to worry it. But if you just sprayed, I'd suggest waiting a couple of days to be safe.
As a landscape contractor, what I would aim for is spray your lawn. Now, this time of year, it's going to take 14 days to knock your lawn on its head. So I would spray it. I would spray it again next weekend. And I use a colour dye in with my glyphosate so I know what I've hit and what I haven't hit. And it's just a vegetable-based product, so it's like a food dye.
Yep.
Get good coverage on it, and probably halfway through that second week, I would confidently start to take the grass out and start to lay new lawn. Glyphosate and slash and all that, they're meant to be inert, so there's not meant to be any trace elements left after. So I'd be pretty confident, I'd be extremely confident because I've done it for 30 years, that you could lay your new turf. And any sort of dead grass that you've left behind just becomes organic matter.
Yeah.
I'll try and take out the bulk of it.
Shane's talking about Tif Tul. A lot of questions about Tif Tul today, which is great. Can't get it short enough and really can only cut on level 8 on a normal push mower. anymore. It bogs and tears the lawn. Do I need a drum mower or a better mower? Look, cylinder mowers or drum mowers or barrel mowers or whatever you call them, they do a better finish. But what you're talking about, Shane, is you can get a great looking tip-tough lawn with a rotary mower. You're referring to thatch, I think, here, which we've spoken about a couple of times. I won't use my saying again, but it's best to drop the height on your mower. It's going to be a tough mower and you're going to use a lot of catches, but really cut the thatch out of it. It's going to be brown and look ugly for a few weeks, but it would be the best thing for it.
I remember, if it's yellow, let it mellow. If it's brown, slash it down. Is that it?
That is not it, but we'll run with it.
All right.
Tim has a seeded lawn. Should I rip it up and lay turf or continue with improving the grass that I have? The problem with seeded lawns, Tim, is whilst they do serve a purpose, they don't self-repair, they don't regenerate. So if you're not happy with how the seeded lawn currently looks, you can't fertilise it and mow it and try and get it to grow laterally because it just won't. Even if it does, it'll be really slow. So you're constantly oversowing and constantly oversowing. For that reason, we generally don't like seeded lawns, neither do any of our turf producers. They grow all their grass, well, pretty much 99% of their grass from live vegetative material. They're warm seasons, so look, obviously we're biased here, but laying new lawn will be best because you're laying a warm season turf. It's drought tolerant, it's environmentally stable, and it self-repairs, so you're not having to worry about reseeding or anything like that.
I'd probably put lawn seed down in a chook bin. That'd be about the only place. They'd have a bit of fun with it. It's just, you can't walk on it. You can't use it. You can't, it might cover a muddy patch, but it's not a usable lawn.
Yeah. No, speak to your local Lawn Solutions member and get a price on a nice new warm season turf grass, and it'll be the best thing you do. Paul, great to have you guys online today. I'm in the Mornington Peninsula, Victoria. Feel sorry for me in okay, I don't know what that means, but I sort of get what he's saying there. Best top dress for Santa Ana cooch, washed white sand or organic, or Santa Ana is quite similar to Tif Tul, but it's the same sort of principle applies for most grasses when we're talking top dressing.
Any wash sand's good. Feed it and water it. The Mornington Peninsula is a very nice spot. I nearly bought a block of land down there one day, but I couldn't afford it. Phillip Island,
great spot. David. Hi guys, this is so awesome. Is Sir Grange being used much for residential areas? Thanks. Yes, David, it is. Sir Grange is used a lot in we've mentioned it a little bit earlier, in the smaller boutique yards where you want something easy to maintain. Great. I've seen it over, 800,000 square metre lawns where it's mowed with a cylinder mower and it just looks like, the best golf course grass you'll ever see. Its biggest usage metre-wise is obviously in golf. It's a very popular grass amongst the golf courses because it's easy for them to manage, but it's making a great name for itself in home lawns as well, particularly in the warm
I've put it into a fair few garden designs over the last 2 or 3 years, and I'm loving what I'm seeing. I lay it on sand and I top dress it with sand, which is a bit of what we'll talk about today. But if you go to that degree of cylinder mower and striping it up, I think it's second to none. I think it's the Rolls Royce of lawns.
Absolutely. Brad, Jason, this one's for you. Who's your tip for Brissy's best lawn?
Well, it's pretty controversial because I reckon I'm going to ask the people. We're doing it with Centenary Turf and Centenary Landscape Supplies and Jim Boomba. Twinview Turf in Brissy. We're doing Brissy's best lawn. I think it's about the 3rd year running. And seriously, you can split it with a hair. There'd be 50 to 60 lawns there that are all embarrassingly good. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass it back to the public and they can vote and get it down to about 10 because seriously, the 60th one is nearly as good as the first one. Very exciting. I love them all.
Everyone should enter. Okay. Dale, what is the best way to deal with winter grass, please? Thanks from Dale in WA. We've already touched on this, Dale, but I will just say a little bit more on it because it's a common question. The southern states, winter grass germinates in about March or April. You generally won't see it till May, but it does germinate before then when the soil temperature gets below about 14 degrees. So when it starts to get cold, winter grass will germinate. Once it's there are things like winter grass killer that you can spray, but it is pretty hard to spray out. Your best bet is to pre-emerge with a product like Oxifert. Now what Oxifert does, as you mentioned before, it stops the weeds before they appear and it's great for use on winter grass. If it is everywhere and you've tried winter grass killer and perhaps it hasn't worked, go back to our weed wandering our roundup trick and give that a go, or you can pull it out by hand.
And remember, Oxford's going to kill the weeds that are going to germinate, not necessarily the weeds that are already germinated. So I always describe it as like there's a film of cling wrap sitting over the top of the soil, and the seeds in the ground can't germinate through it. So the ones that are already there, you might not knock them on the head, but you're knocking the seeds in the ground, which is breaking the cycle.
Burgers has said my lawn is saturated at the moment. Now, while not a specific question, I did want to talk about this because it's pretty important. It's causing a lot of damage in lawns, particularly on softleaf buffalo lawns in the southern states that have stayed really, really wet, particularly over winter, and more common are lawns in shade. Reason being is lawns hate wet feet. Most people hate wet feet, but lawns in particular, it causes the roots to rot a little bit. Now, when we get all this rain and perhaps your base isn't draining or as forgiving as it should be, and you've got a lawn in shade and it's cool, the lawn is staying wet and getting those wet feet and it's causing it to rot. A couple of things you can do to help. One is aerate or core. That will definitely let a lot of pressure off and let a lot of water drain down into the soil. The best thing you can do is when you're putting in a new lawn, make sure you've got a decent base of free draining soil. That way it'll get rid of water really well, but otherwise you can aerate and top dress as well.
Treat your lawn like it's a garden bed. You know, so if your garden bed was compacted, you would garden fork it, you'd aerate a lawn. Biggest tip I would say is if you know that it's boggy, stay off it. Like don't compound it and make it worse.
Yep. A couple more questions here. Mitchell Marsh. Oh, I don't think it's him, but still.
No, I reckon it is. Definitely is.
Really tough. Thanks for your question. Wanting to get rid of the kikuyu lawn, how much should I dig out to eradicate the kikuyu from coming back? I won't say good luck, but you can do it. Kikuyu does have a deep root system and it is an aggressive grass. We'll go back to what we said at the top of this today. Spraying it out and being patient, giving it time to come back, spraying it again, giving it time to come back, spraying again, just to make sure you get all of it. If it's dead, the excavation only has to be to the appropriate soil depth, which is, you know.
And then if it's dead, it's just organic matter. I just want to congratulate you, Mitch. I wrote you off years ago, didn't think you're a very good cricketer, but you won the World Cup for us, so thanks, mate. I never lost faith, Marshy. Well done, mate. Luke, how hard is it to replace buffalo with Tif Tul? Fortunately, buffalo doesn't have a strong rhizome system, which is the underground runners we mentioned before. So it's probably the easiest grass to get rid of. Obviously, funnily enough, it's a very successful grass and grows very well. But because of this lack of a rhizome, it does come up pretty easily. So a couple of doses with glyphosate slasher, 7 days apart, you can pull buffalo out pretty easily and put in your nice, good, beautiful, tough lawn. Good luck with that. We're just about to wrap up, so we will have a couple of questions. A couple more questions. David's in Sydney with Sir Grange, has a modern salt pool that's overflowed onto the lawn and seems to have damaged the turf. Any recommendations on treatment or give up and replace? Look, Sir Grange, funnily enough, is probably one of the most salt-tolerant turf grass varieties on the market. Reason being is zoysia is different to other grasses. Sir Grange is a zoysia. Their salt glands are in the leaf. So when salt gets onto a zoysia grass, it pushes it upwards. So if you mow and catch the clippings, you're actually extracting the salt from the plant. Other grasses tends to go down. That way, when you see golf courses that might have poor quality water or are exposed to salt, they will flush their greens with a lot of fresh water to get it out. But Sir Grange can handle it quite well. Look, if your grass isn't all but dead, you can give it a good soaking and really try and flush it out. But the best thing you can do is, this sounds super obvious, but try and do whatever you can to avoid so much salt getting into the plant. You can top dress and keep top dressing with sand and try and improve the soil profile as best you can. But if there's a lot of salt water getting onto it, it's always going to struggle. No more bombs off the roof into the pool.
Okay, that's pretty much it. We're going to have one more question for us, guys. I think a lot of them that are popping up here is we have covered pretty well. How to kill kikuyu on cooch from Harry. Now, this is one that I have a little bit of a problem with now. Where I am, kikuyus are naturally occurring grass. This used to be a cow paddock in our housing estate. We've laid Tif Tul. Kikuyu, the aggressive grass we mentioned before, has popped up in between. Let's keep this really generic, and let's say, how do I take any grass out of the grass that I want there? How do I take kai out of buffalo, cooch out of kai? Look, there are sprays you can get, but let's just steer away from that totally. Let's go back to our weed wand method. Yeah. If you go to a farm, for example, there's a turf farm near here that has hundreds of acres of Tif Tul and gets kikuyu through it, they use a weed wand to treat their crop as well. You don't damage the turf, and you get rid of the foreign grass you don't want. You can try and dig it out, but if you're trying to dig out kikuyu, the roots can go down meters and meters, so you're fine.
I like using the glove with the finger. The weed ones work well.
Yeah.
Knock it on the head. You might go back and do it a second time, but you will beat it.
Absolutely, and that'll wrap us up for today. We'd love to thank everyone for their questions, and if we didn't get to you today, we will respond on Facebook or YouTube or whatever you commented on. As usual, if you've ever got a problem with your lawn or you've got a question, get in touch with Lawn Solutions Australia or one of our 43 members around the country, and they will help it for you. If you're in the market for a new lawn, or you're after some products to improve your lawn or do some of the things we spoke about today, lawnsolutionsaustralia.com.au. You can get a direct quote from one of our turf suppliers on new turf, or you can jump on our lawn store. That's got everything you need.
Is that a direct quote, like you can play on this and play with that, or mow it till it's dead? What would you want?
Smack it down till it's drowned. Any cliches today? No,
Thanks everyone.
Thanks everyone for joining us, and we hope to see you on the next one. Cheers.